Have you ever watched Castaway and wondered if someone could actually survive that long alone? Or maybe you've read Robinson Crusoe, the famous story of a man stranded on a deserted island. Well, what if I told you it was all inspired by an actual person? This is the incredible true story of Alexander Selkirk, a sailor who was left behind on a remote island in the Pacific and survived, alone, for more than 4 years. It's the early 1700s, and the seas are filled with danger. Pirates, ruthless captains, and ships that fall apart in the middle of nowhere. Alexander Selkirk was a Scottish sailor aboard the Cinque Ports, a privateering ship on a mission to raid Spanish vessels. But Selkirk wasn't just any crew member. He was stubborn, hot-tempered, and always spoke his mind. One day, as the ship approached the Pacific coast of South America, Selkirk made a bold and dangerous decision. He didn't trust the captain. The ship was in terrible shape, leaky, rotting, falling apart. He argued that if they didn't repair it soon, they would all sink. But the captain didn't want to hear it. Selkirk only saw one way out. He demanded he be left behind on an island rather than continue on what he believed was a doomed ship. He thought another ship would come by soon and pick him up. So, in 1704, he stepped onto the shores of Mas a Tierra, a small uninhabited island 400 miles off the coast of Chile, with nothing but a musket, a knife, a cooking pot, some clothes, and a Bible. So, the ship sailed away and never came back. Now the harsh reality of survival set in. At first, Selkirk probably thought he made the biggest mistake of his life. The silence was deafening. There was no friendly faces, no crew, no ships on the horizon, and just the howling wind, the crashing waves, and the endless stretch of ocean. The first few weeks were brutal. The island was filled with strange noises at night. He could hear something moving in the darkness. It turned out the island was home to feral cats and howling sea lions, some of which were far from friendly. Food, of course, was another issue. He had no supplies, no fishing line, and no way to preserve anything he caught. As desperation set in, he began to hunt wild goats that roamed the island. It was a stroke of luck that these goats had been left behind by Spanish sailors years earlier. He learned to chase them down and kill them with his bare hands. Eventually, he even domesticated a few to provide milk and companionship. But that was only part of his survival. Without proper shelter, he was exposed to the elements. Heavy storms battered the island, and without a fire, cold nights were unbearable. Using trees and large leaves, he built 2 small huts in a valley, protecting himself from the worst of the weather. And then, of course, the loneliness set in and created a madness of isolation. 4 years. That's 1,460 days alone. No human contact. No voice to hear except his own. To keep his mind sharp, Selkirk read the Bible out loud to himself. He talked to the animals, especially the wild cats, which he tamed to protect him from rats that swarmed the camp at night. Spending that much time alone on the island, he became a true survivalist. He could move faster than most men, running barefoot across the rough terrain, and could go days without food, conditioned by the harshness of island life. Then, after 4 years of complete solitude, Selkirk's life changed forever. In 1709, Selkirk saw sails on the horizon. A ship was approaching, but there was one big problem. Was it friendly? Spanish ships often patrolled the waters, and if they found him, he would be captured and likely killed. He hid in the trees, watching and waiting, but when he saw that the ship was British, he ran towards the shore, waving his arms wildly. That ship's captain, Woodes Rogers, was stunned when he met Selkirk. The man was barely human anymore, wild, unkempt, and speaking strangely from years of isolation. But what shocked Selkirk the most? The ship that he had left 4 years earlier, Cinque Ports, had sunk shortly after he was abandoned. Had he stayed aboard, he would have drowned with the rest of the crew. So, what he thought was his worst mistake had actually saved his life. Now, it was time for Selkirk to return to civilization as a legend. His story spread across England, eventually inspiring Daniel Defoe to write Robinson Crusoe, one of the most famous survival stories of all time. But Despite his fame, Selkirk never quit, adjusted back to normal life. He had spent so many years alone that he struggled with crowds and the noise of a city. At times, he even wished to return to the island. His story remains one of the greatest real-life survival tales in history. A man lost everything, but in doing so, saved himself. So, what do you think? Could you survive on a deserted island for 4 years? Let me know in the comments. And if you like this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more incredible true stories. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it, and I'll see you next time.